Welcome to the 32nd episode of the Perfectly Imperfect Spiritual Podcast. Today's guest is Rebecca Douglas, a visual storyteller blending photo, video, drone, speaking and writing, and a passionate advocate for rewilding our connection to nature. With a unique focus on liminal spaces, the wild edges where creativity, intuition, and transformation meet, Rebecca captures the raw beauty of people, places, and our planet. Through her work, she inspires curiosity and connection, blending technical expertise with soulful storytelling to highlight the magic and impact of living in harmony with the natural world. Whether it's photographing the aurora, diving beneath the waves, or exploring the rhythms of the season, Rebecca invites us to see the world and ourselves through a radically authentic lens. Welcome, Rebecca, to the podcast.
Hi, Marta. It's lovely to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm so thrilled that we've made it today. And those who are watching or listening might not know, but Rebecca is behind those beautiful pictures on my social media. I found her online when I was searching for a photographer for my photo shoot, someone I could truly resonate with. And none of the recommended photographers felt quite right. Something was always missing. And then I remember I decided to Google full moon photography because my connection to the moon and nature is an intrinsic and empirical part of who I am as a human. And I really wanted a photographer who could help me convey this part of myself through visuals. And that's how I discovered you, Rebecca. And even though you were located all the way in the southeast, and I'm based in Edinburgh. I traveled down to work with you, and it couldn't have been further away, but it was so worth it. So thank you so much for that experience. It was very meaningful. So Rebecca, your work as a visual storyteller is incredibly inspiring, blending technical precision with such soulful, authentic storytelling. Can you share what first drew you to this path? And was there a particular moment or experience that really sparked your passion for capturing the connection between nature, creativity, and transformation?
Sure. I've always been connected to nature and obsessed with sunsets and light and drawn to those liminal moments where things happen so quickly in such a fleeting way. And so for as long as I can remember, I was taking photos. My first job when I was at school, my Saturday job was developing film in a newsagent. So I started on the old 35mm film. And that was really spectacular to have the space to experiment with the film way of shooting because digital hadn't really evolved in was 97, so we're going back a
Mm.
really long time. And It was quite cool. I used to have to pay 50p to have a film roll developed. And then I could actually see if there was anything on the negatives that I wanted to print. I probably spent most of the money I earned back into films being developed.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was really amazing to start in that space. And then I went off to do geography at university, and that was very much kind of nature connection. And then didn't really kind of come back to photography until about 5 years after I graduated. So it had always been there as a hobby, but really decided that I wanted to um, just, kind of probe whether this could be something that I could do as a job. And so I started shooting portraits, had a kind of stall at a fair, and then very quickly booked weddings. And it all evolved very organically. And so I started shooting paid work in 2010 and built that up around my full-time job as a lecturer. And then I went full-time at the start of 2014. And I shot weddings through till 2020. But like again, this kind of organic thread has always been there, and I've always sort of trusted this guide in a direction of as to where my work goes. And the sort of the brand storytelling had started to become more of a theme coming. And so a lot of wedding suppliers had asked if I would shoot sort of behind the scenes, like a florist of how the bouquet was made, for example. And so we
Hmm.
went to a flower market and did the whole story of a wedding bouquet being made. And so this storytelling thread was there, the nature connection thread was there, and it was always about sharing a narrative and a story that helps connect to people on that sensory level, helping people feel and experience the service or the products that they were going to be looking to buy. And so that thread has always sort of been there for me. And as I moved more and more into the branding, it was very much at the time my own spiritual journey was evolving. And the more that I shared around the spirituality and that connection to source, the more I was attracting clients that felt very heart-led, very connected. And so I just really sort of tuned into that and allowed that to guide me to where I am today. And working with you was just part of that beautiful journey where I feel there's that purpose and that connection and almost like an unspoken understanding of how we connect and see with the world. So that collaboration and co-creation within the space then of the shoot is really powerful because there's a genuine kind of excitement to that collaboration, I think. So that's the journey. So
Uh-huh. Beautiful. Thank you. And I love it how you allowed yourself to organically be guided. Okay, we both agree that there's source, there's something greater than ourselves. So it's nice that you're still incorporating that storytelling and you've managed to experience, portraying the uh, love stories of so many people, and now you move to branding and you're still able to convey those intangible emotions. And I really love that there is still storytelling beyond. It's not just taking photographs, there's something more. Um, I feel like so many viewers and listeners would like to know a little bit about your spiritual connection and, like, in general, how you started incorporating it into your work as well, and whether there are any rituals or anything that you invite some of your clients maybe to try out for themselves, because perhaps it gives them a different energy when they come and you um, photo shoot for them. Well, let me know, please.
yeah, sure. So I think I've never had a religion and never believed in a specific figure. Um, but I always had this kind of sixth sense connection to nature, like I mentioned, and it was very much a being guided by light, because obviously light as a photographer completely, photography is painting with light or kind of art with light. So the essence of it is very much light connected. So I'd always followed the sunset and the sunrise times of the year and where the moon would be, and just thinking about then like the seasonality and like the color tones of the landscape and just all of this innate wisdom was something that I tuned into. And I hadn't really realized the fact that this was paganism and how paganism in its essence is just that connection to nature and that
Mhm.
um, awe-inspired, overwhelming love of the fact that we are part of something. And so I feel very much the sense of my head's in the stars, my toes are in the sand. And I'm obsessed with the universe and the night sky and chasing the aurora. And I tune into space weather as much as I tune into earth weather. So there's very much this kind of um, downloading constantly of this intelligence that nature holds and shares with us, and those messages that will shape and hold how I shoot, because it's a surrendering almost. And I think there's alchemy in stepping into that liminal space, as I call it. And I really feel now that the shoot space is very liminal because The alchemy is the energy of the person, my energy, and then what nature is wrapping around us in that moment, and how we get to kind of co-create with that. And so it's very spiritual in that kind of sense, although it may not necessarily always be explicit, depending on how spiritual the person is that I'm connecting with. And so um, for me, I think that that journey is something that is constantly evolving. But as soon as I found it and read a book that was called The Magic Year or The Magical Year, I think by Darnie Forrest, and I just read it, absorbed it from cover to cover. And I'm an ADHDer, and reading for me is something I find really hard to actually get the concentration and start and finish a book. I've got so many books I've started, but
Hmm.
and they're in a pile by my bed, and I hope I'll kind of absorb them by osmosis at some point. But it's just kind of getting to that point of reading, and I just flew through this book, and was like, yeah, this is absolutely it, and realized the potency of how nature and this cyclical living, and really allowing that to guide me and my work and my purpose, supports everything that I do, because we're just a small dot and part of this massive ecosystem, and this beautiful web and kind of the energetics of it all. And so, yeah, it's something that I just get so excited by, because it's there implicitly all the time, flowing. And the liminality piece for me is sort of where I see all of my work and all of the different facets, because I am so multifaceted, coming together, because actually it's always about this polarity and dualism. And so I've learned in the last 6 months that I'm also autistic, and that just makes so much sense to me in terms of the spirituality side and the energetics, and feeling the term animism. I don't know if you're familiar with, and that I feel everything has this innate energy and life force, and has a message and a kind of a reason for being, and it's sort of just tapping into why that's there and what it can tell us. And so I think then that liminal space for me is the energetics between ADHD and autism, and how they blend and sort of support me in that creative way, and bring me in that alchemy. And I guess why I'm drawn to the liminal space is like the coastline, and because it's always
Hmm.
moving. There's never a point which high or low tide happens. It's just a flow, and the wheel of the year, and that's that sort of spiritual frame, doesn't have any set rules. It's what you want it to be for yourself, rather than the very kind of masculine top-down religion that says you have to do or be a certain way. I think that spirituality is far greater than religion, and it just it suits me and is me in essence. So yeah, that's sort of where I'm at on the journey at the moment.
Beautiful. And I've had various thoughts in my mind as you were speaking, but definitely like you speaking about the liminal spaces, like there's so many similarities actually in your work and then in mine, because I personally find the notion of liminal spaces fascinating,
Mm,
because for me, they're both literal and then metaphorical.
mm,
And as a psychic medium, I see liminal spaces as sacred thresholds where profound
mm,
transformation really takes
mm,
place. And these are the in between really moments when we are no longer who we were,
mm.
but not yet who we are becoming.
Yeah.
And it's that raw, uncertain, and deeply transformative state where really intuition thrives. And then the veil between the physical and spiritual realms feels really thin.
Mm, mm, mm,
So I really like, and I know that you also help your clients to really tap into something greater than they are, not only at the physical level, but so that their like soul is able to be seen through
mm,
the visuals. That's so
mm,
beautiful.
mm,
Um, the other thought that I had was, of course, your strong connection to nature, and I think you talk a lot about how you encourage rewilding our connection to nature. And then it's so fascinating how similar our work is
Mhm.
in this aspect, because as a psychic medium, I also hopefully help people to reconnect with nature and really realize that we are not separate from it, but
Mhm.
an intrinsic part of it.
Mhm.
So could you tell a little bit what does rewilding mean to you, and
Mhm.
how do you incorporate into your projects, and maybe what transformations you've witnessed in your clients or maybe friends?
Yeah. I mean, I've always thought about photo shoots as a threshold. And so it is a step into the unknown. And um, I think there's a real honouring of what that journey means and the significance of that to perhaps be going from unseen to seen. And that is a huge step. And there's that wild edge at the edge of someone's comfort zone as you step into a shoot space. And it's really sacred. And like you say, you're leaving something behind, and that journey is transitioning into something different. And I'm so aware that it's not just a photo, because yes, you can have a headshot, but if you really want to do the soul work, I think there's a real way of amplifying the connection to self through a photo shoot. And I think that the spiritual work is about bringing that connection to self back through grounding and rooting in nature. And like you say, remembering that we are nature and we are part of nature. And I think for me, this is where each photo shoot is almost like a piece of activism, because I think liminality and the way that it brings stepping into that space brings you into an unknown and a beyond where you thought might be possible for yourself. Has a ripple effect. It kind of it takes people into a new place, and it is empowering people to go out and do work. And I see this is where the activism sits for me, is that I'm empowering and emboldening people to root into their work more, to be seen, to be able to show up in ways that they feel super confident and connected to. And then I know from what clients have reflected back to me is then the potency of how they go out and show themselves to the world and the work they're doing um, is amplified. And so it's those sort of, I feel it's like kind of covert over activism, in that like it's I'm helping people go out and do this work that is the disruptive work that really is the antithesis of the systems and structures that are harming people and planet. And so I think the more that we connect back to ourselves, the more then we have space to see that we're part of something greater. And actually that things can just be so simple if we connect into nature and start to reject capitalism, consumerism, and how they intersect with so many ways that advantage the privileged and disadvantage or segregate or discriminate against so many people. And so I feel the more people step into their light doing this work that is disruptive, then the more we have a chance of healing the planet and actually um, moving into a space where it's part of that awakening, isn't it? And that this grand awakening of what is happening right now is not serving us. And the fact we're having this conversation at a point where one of the biggest cities in the world is on fire um, isn't lost on me in terms of the urgency of the work and this disruption that needs to happen. Because yeah, I think this kind of the benefiting of a handful of rich people at the top that are selling us narratives and things to believe about the way things are that clearly
Mm-hmm.
aren't true, just isn't serving us. And so bringing that back down, and that gets very kind of like grand, kind of,
Mm-hmm.
political and that sort of debate. But on an individual level, it's sort of, I know the people that I work with are very purpose led. They have impact, probably as a North Star in terms of the work they're doing, either for the people that they're working with or the work those people are doing will have a positive impact. And so I have this sense of urgency because I know the work that I shoot will help people transform the world. So
Mm-hmm.
and it feels like a huge
Yeah.
responsibility. And so and yeah, so I have that sort of sense of urgency, but that really locks me onto my North Star of why I do what I do.
Mm-hmm. I love it. And presumably, or I know for sure that so many of your clients, like, well, not every probably client, when they start collaborating, working with you, it's aware that there will be so much more that they're going to discover for themselves. That includes really tapping into their authentic self, but also waking up like parts of their souls that they haven't known for themselves. And that includes your important role in reminding your clients and everyone that we're part of that
Mhm.
nature. And then I love it because it feels to me as well that you're empowering people. Um, well, I don't know why I want to talk mainly women, but I'm sure men as well, to really speak their truth and tap into their authentic self. And
Mhm.
almost like the word rebellious come to me
Mhm.
as well,
Mhm.
so that we are not agreeing to be like labeled or put into a particular category. And I feel like through your photography, then you're empowering people to be everything and nothing, like whatever they want. And what it keeps coming to my mind is that, like with the cycles and maybe with the rhythms of moon, like we also evolve, we change, and we've got various parts of our nature that maybe we want to discover for ourselves, but I feel like by showing it to the world, we are then helping other people. It's like a
Mhm.
ripple effect
Mhm.
for them to stand into their truth and authentic self
Yeah.
so they can feel empowered and they can actually start making a change because
Mhm.
it
Mhm.
starts from an individual if we want to really make changes
Yeah.
at a bigger
And I think
scale.
that you touched on the fact kind of saying talk to women, and I think it is mainly women that I work with, but I think that there is a reason for that in that everything that is wrong with the world is toxic masculine, and it is this uprising of the divine feminine energy that is softly and powerfully challenging that situation and that imbalance. And again, here we are. It's the polarity. It's that liminal pull between those two energies. And so um, I feel that the rebel rousers are the women that are having these awakenings and going, why have I allowed myself to be conditioned by these systems and structures and social constructs that tell me I have to do a certain thing and be a certain way when actually none of that is serving me or the collective. And so I need to show up in a way that disrupts that. And I've done some work on my brand strategy, and very much
Mm-hmm.
rebel is part of the kind of archetype, and sage and kind of feeling that
Mm-hmm.
wisdom side, but also the kind of creative explorer where it gets to be playful and the kind of the curiosity and the but why and the awe. And I think that blend is then the kind of the foundation, if you like, for um, a really transformative experience if people are ready to sort of let down their walls and come into that space and have that journey for themselves.
Mm-hmm. I love it. And how do you think at a collective level, but also at an individual level, can tapping into your own divine feminine energy, and we will all know that it doesn't matter what's your gender, we all have divine feminine, divine masculine energies, but like how is it, how does it help to really, well, balance out and maybe heal the toxic well, divine masculine. I wouldn't then call it divine, but yeah, and basically I'm hoping with that conversation we can encourage more people to tap into their intuition and tap into almost the word softening comes to me, like
Mm,
slowing
mm.
down, softening, and really receiving guidance from like beyond, not only using the analytical mind, because we can then achieve so much more by doing less. I don't
Yeah,
know, like
yeah,
this
yeah.
keeps coming.
I mean, I think that in Western civilization, we are in very patriarchal societies where when we go back to the point at which, when you look at paganism and that journey and that ancient wisdom, and then how any innate wisdom and nature connection was persecuted and people were killed for holding this innate wisdom and this knowledge. And it's still vilified and made comical in terms of what witch is and what that means. And I just think
Hmm.
that actually that was the most divine feminine wisdom that kept us connected to our land and our local land as well, and just reminded us of all of that innate intelligence there that was then lost. And I think part of this work very much is the softening, and that is a really hard thing to do where a society around you is not soft. And the overarching is the patriarchy, the misogyny, the very toxic masculine energy. And so to keep deviating from that is really hard. And I think in terms of the journey for me, that it's not lost on me that my softening took place when I realized I had ADHD, which was in 2021. And then when I was diagnosed, then the journey continued and realized that I was autistic, and I had to obviously wait for that
Hmm.
assessment, just had that knowing. And then that awakening that I had about this sense of a sixth sense connection, but actually knowing that my brain's wired differently, and that I've always felt like this outsider, this edge walker, um, is actually then my biggest strength, because I've been resisting all of those things for and finding that they're just not right for me, and they've been very negative in terms of the consumerism and the linear trajectory of things, when actually we are cyclical. We live in a cyclical place where we have the seasons, and if you are, biologically a woman, and you have those cycles inside of you, you have those seasons cycling every month with lining up with that moon cycle. And if you're constantly suppressing that cyclical side, then it's no wonder there's this disconnect between how you are feeling, and how kind of the world feels outside of that. And I've noticed since I've been on this journey learning about my neurodivergence and leaning into the seasons and the cyclical nature of the energy. I used to crash in winter. I'd get to just before Christmas, particularly when I shot weddings, um, because I was at these mad social occasions where there was so much sensory, sound, lights, everything going on. And then your own social life was concerts for the bands I was in, socializing,
Hmm.
and kind of performing everything you should do for Christmas. And then I would crash. And I realized that it was because I was so disconnected from myself and my own needs, and so disconnected from the season, and the fact that actually this is the point of year where we go inwards, we hibernate, we slow down. We don't then suddenly keep ramping it up to these chaotic schedules, and then feeling like we have to buy and give people all of these big expensive things. And so this is now the third year I've not celebrated Christmas at all, and I've just literally stepped off. We have a feast on winter solstice,
Hmm.
and we slow down. And from Samhain to kind of solstice, it's a very much a starting the rituals of lighting candles and having those cozy evenings where it is slower. And my gosh, that feeling of crashing and burning has gone. And I actually don't have the sense of seasonal effectiveness that I've had up until the point at which I've made this switch to connecting much more to the wisdom and intelligence of the seasons. So um, I think that's really, really powerful in terms of then that disruption
Hmm.
to balancing out those energies, because capitalism is on a linear trajectory and doesn't want people doing anything different. And it's that bigger, faster, more, harder, spend, and consume and be the perfect consumer. And when you reject that, life is so simple and so easy. And it's quite stark to me now how people um, are so in a swirl and kind of sucked in so passively to the construct of what you should do at this
Mm.
time of year or leading up to that celebration. Um, that it makes me feel quite sad about how depleted people get at that time of year now, because that awakening, and I know it's hard, I don't have children, so I know it's harder for people that have kids and sort of fitting in with, that
Hmm.
expectation. Um, but yeah, I think kind of the root of, I think, that disconnection for me is that, um, if you're not Christian and believe in Christ and the birth of Jesus, um, Christmas is about worshipping a fat old white man. um,
Hmm.
and he's telling you to spend money and do all of these things. And it's like if Father Christmas didn't symbolize what capitalism is, um, I can't think of a more kind of appropriate icon for capitalism and actually what's wrong with the linear trajectory. And so kind of rejecting that then helps you see how that templates and that model is just replicated in so many areas of our lives. And I think then it's one of those, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And then I think that helps you rapidly start to kind of reject and actually become really comfortable with life on the edge, being that edge walker, being in that liminal space a lot more, and choosing to step away from those things and knowing that each of those decisions is a little rebel rousing bit of activism against those systems that are harming people and planet. So yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I love it. And it is so freeing. It's been so freeing for myself as well to reject and to really, I don't want to say, but like rebel against what I should be doing or how I should be uh, thinking. It's so easier and
Mm,
simpler
mm,
when you connect to your true self and when you connect to your own nature. And it was important, I think it's important to mention because I feel like coming back to the photography, like perhaps not every client of yours, I know you're attracting so many more soulmate clients, is like fully aware of their cyclical nature or maybe connection to nature. And
mm,
it was so important. And that's why we had that beautiful conversation before the photo shoot that not only were able to push and postpone the photo shoot because it was colder, but then
mm,
you've got that knowledge about moon phases and about tides and waves, and we were able to do it later on, but also we were able to ad adjust it to my cyclical
mm,
nature as well. And it was so important because we were able to have that open conversation. And for
mm,
me, this is how I operate on day-to-day basis.
mm,
This is how I run my business as well. I plan things, activities according to my nature.
mm,
So there are moments, days during the month when it's time for me to remove myself,
mm,
to really tap more into my intuition, but also like rest.
mm,
So
mm,
allowing yourself to be able to do it is so liberating because I
mm,
feel then you're able to remove some of your pains in the body. I feel
mm,
like when you're part of the system and when you're doing, pushing, then our bodies can try and really rebel against. And this is
mm,
when we're getting lots of, for instance, headaches or maybe
mm,
backache.
mm.
It's
Yeah, the
freeing.
body does keep score for sure. And I think kind of I didn't kind of quite get to the rewilding point, but I think all of those steps and those processes, and when I talk about rewilding our connection to nature and rewilding our connection to self, it's those, and it's not, it's a softening, and it's not kind of a right, okay, so how do I do rewilding? And it's like, well, it's not like that. It's a whole process, it's a whole journey. And actually, it's a letting go and a simplifying, and coming back to um, those really, really simple things. And then when you do that, it's just utterly liberating, I think, on a soul level. And I think you can then really start to kind of cut through and think about how you can make an impact in this journey, um, be it, informally with people around you or through work that we're doing. And so that rewilding for me is like that kind of anti-capitalism, anti-linear trajectory piece, and leaning into what we actually innately all already know. And I think that's the thing, is it's in there, but it's like an onion, isn't it? Almost like taking away those layers to get to that beautiful glowing core of what soul and spirit and that alignment gets to be. If you allow yourself to let all of those layers that we're told we have to be by the social constructs melt away. And that it is a big journey, and it's a privilege to have the space to do that, the safety and the means, because for some people that journey isn't possible in circumstances that they're in.
Hmm.
And I think that there's a real responsibility as a collective to acknowledge that intersect and do as much as we can to help people break the barriers and the walls that they face in order to start that journey as well.
Hmm. That's so important. And I completely agree that by removing all those layers, we're able to connect with our true selves because there's
Mm,
so much disconnection. I really feel like we all have that inner knowing of who we are and what should be done here at a
mm,
collective individual level as well. And then by allowing ourselves just to receive and just to be, I
mm,
think things just happen sometimes without
mm.
us forcing things. You've worked on on so many incredible projects, and I know like photographing the aurora, diving underwater, exploring natural spaces. Which of these experiences has been like the most magical or meaningful for you?
I think it's hard, and I feel very privileged again to sort of be like, oh, it's hard to pinpoint,
Hmm.
because I've aligned my life so that I can be in these spaces that just fill my heart with awe and that connection. Because for me, those liminal spaces are where the dopamine is, and so I know that my neurodivergent brain should be in nature. That's where it is most supported, most free, and um, yeah, basically made to be, I think. And so for me, I think the moments where you know this is fleeting and you just need to soak it in. And I think photography is the tool that allows me to believe it's happened because I get so overwhelmed by the awe in the moment that it's almost like I can't process it because it is so achingly and painfully beautiful. Um, and so sometimes I don't get time to edit my own trips because I come back straight to client work. And so that's the priority. And if I haven't edited it, I don't remember really that it's happened
Hmm.
because and I know this is very much my autistic brain of, I then just go over the pictures again and again and again because it was so overwhelming in the moment that I haven't processed it. And the processing is then looking at the pictures to make me believe it's happened. And then I remember the photos that then help me tap into the feeling of the moment. And so, yeah, there's sometimes people ask me about a trip. Like when we went to Shetland, for example, we went snorkeling with diving gannets. And that's the only part of that trip so far, really, that I've edited. And so the rest of the trip is just, it feels like white light in my head. I can't visualize it that strongly because I don't have the visuals that have helped me remember it. And so, yeah, I think the moments I'd say that I yearn for the most are probably underwater, um,
Hmm.
because the it is so liminal. It is the epitome of liminal in both the physical and metaphorical sense. And I think putting your face in water, even if you've just got a pair of swimming goggles and you've got a clear sea, you can go have a look. And it is utterly, utterly wonderful and awe-inspiring. And I think the closest we would ever get to the sense of going into space, because it is like nothing else you can ever process. And you see images of it, but it still doesn't give you the effect of that 360 wraparound. And when you're in clear seas on a sunny day, and there's the movement on the surface, the way the rays of light are cutting the surface and painting through, and they'll just catch run across an urchin, and it will suddenly go ultraviolet because the way it reacts in the light. And it's just little moments like that that just I wish I could just have my face in seawater every day like that. We don't have clear seas down here, so I very much kind of have that yearning for the West Coast and that kind of space because of the clarity of the water. So I think it's those moments I live for. But even still, like yesterday, we had the murkiest fog in Margate, and we've got a beautiful harbour arm around the harbour there with a lighthouse at the end, and sort of the lighthouse would appear and disappear again. And for me, I
Hmm.
just love the metaphor of that. And so I'm writing things around in bulk at the moment for my blog and social media. And I loved the fact that, kind of we know the lighthouse is there. but there's this liminality that the mist and fog brings of it. It kind of adds a veil to the clarity and transparency of what we see. And then I get into that wider kind of, philosophical debate about like seeing and what we actually see. But I loved the metaphor of it sort of just being there in the fog. And it's like, well, we know the whole harbour arm is there, and we trust in that, but we can only see part of it. And so that for me felt like this unfurling that happens when you come out of deep midwinter, if you are really going into that radical act of rest and slowing down, to get to this unfurling of Imbolc and those first kind of mutterings of spring and the unseen starting to be seen again, and trusting that we know it's coming and it's there, but not fully seeing that moment. And so I love that connection with nature when those liminal moments really metaphorically kind of physically display the reason of this season at the moment. So yeah, I think they're the kind of the things that light me up, I guess. So
Hmm. I love it. And for me, being well, I'm part of nature as well, and nature so much soothes me, and I get so much wisdom and so much downloads. And when you were describing your experiences of being close to water, I had another thought which might be completely different, but it reminded me of the moments when I am in meditative state,
mm,
when I'm so tapped into my soul, when I'm so tapped in and connected to the source, when nothing really matters. I'm just in the moment here and now, soaking the beauty of the present moment
mm,
and
mm,
the energy that really it's like the connection of the energy of the divine and
yeah,
my own soul, but like I'm now visually in my third eye seeing the light of different
yeah,
colors, and it
yeah,
reminded me about that visual representation
yeah,
of what can happen when we allow to really live life fully and
hmm,
immerse ourselves in the moment
yeah.
to really experience it
It's
all.
such a spot on reflection of how it feels actually. And I've sometimes described it like that. And thank you for like tuning into that and sharing that because yeah, I think life in my fast brain is that it's always got more than 100 things happening at once. And um, getting presence for me and being in that meditative state can be quite difficult. I just put my hand up and I don't know how I've
Mhm.
done that. The um, the kind of the moment my face emerges, and you said the word immersion, because your ears just go below the surface,
Mhm.
and so sound as we know it is muffled. So you're not having to process. It's that kind of
Mhm.
underwater just there's noise, but it's not got clarity. And therefore, it's not something you're really processing. It's just phased out. And it's almost like noise cancelling headphones coming on. And then you're floating. So you're not having to think about holding your body because you're being held. And then that sense of floating is when you are in that heart, head, third eye source connection of a meditation. And I always snorkel with somebody because for me, that's when I tap into hyper focus, which is a real facet of ADHD, where nothing in a sensory way is connecting with me other than the absolute absorption in this moment. And so I lose all track of, do I feel cold? Am I thirsty? How long have I been in? How far am
Mhm.
I from like where we started? Because I'm so in the moment. And so I actually need that reminder. And usually it's my husband I snorkel with, and he'll be like, I think we should get out now. And as soon as he pierces that consciousness, oh my gosh, I suddenly realize like I can't feel my hands and feet, and my mouth's really dry from mouth breathing with
Mhm.
snorkeling and that sort of thing. And but I just have no introspection of that when I'm in that hyper focus. And for me, that is awake meditation in my brain once I can get into that flow, because to actually get focused like that can be quite difficult. But it is instantaneous as soon as my face is in the water. And it is like some of the most powerful meditation or breathwork sessions. It is on that level, like you describe. And so, yeah, it is really, really special to be able to have that meditation in nature, and that it actually holds us in that way. Is really, really magical.
Oh, so beautiful. Thank you. If you could photograph one magical or historical moment, real or imagined, what would it be and why?
Oh, um,
It can be more than one.
yeah, gosh, I think I love meteorology and seeing rare things. And there's a couple of things. One of them is red sprites, and they're like these kind of red electric. I haven't really read into the science of them, but I see photos pop up and they look like lightning bolts, but they're bright red.
Hmm.
And so you kind of see them around storms and that kind of thing. And they're just something I would love to witness one day. And then I think the other thing is I've seen them once in Finland. It was about -26. And they're called light pillars. And so when you are in an area where it's a bit misty from the fact it's so cold, light from the ground can refract up in these light pillars through the mist.
Mm.
And if you are in the right area with, enough space back on where the light sources are, cities just become lines of these lights beaming up to source sort of thing. And I'd love to see it because we were on the way to the airport at about 4 in the morning, filling up the car with petrol, and it was the supermarket signs that were doing it into the sky. And I'm like, this really isn't the beautiful, majestic scene I've had in my mind. So I think it's those sorts of things that I don't have anything. I think I've been fortunate that a lot of bucket list things that I've always wanted to experience and capture, I've been able to be immersed in. And so I think it's more just about being open and curious to what might come into being. And so last week I had some time away in the business and I worked with an incredible soul who's been supporting me with just visioning and pulling out kind of ideas and bringing it into something meaningful going forward. And we did a card pull on the first night, and I've never done more than a one card pull.
Hmm.
And I did a 5 card soul inquiry.
Mm.
And I think I went into a state of spiritual awakening after it. And I was so drained by Friday, I couldn't actually speak. And I kept feeling this energy from my third eye, this warmth and this energy around me, because it was so powerful in terms of what it laid out and articulated what I knew, but in such an aligned way that I was almost like the heat of this, I can't hold the potency and the power of this, but I know that this is my soul calling. But to have it affirmed to me, and then I pulled from a different deck 2 hours later to ask it the question, just a one card pull of like whether this is the soul calling and my North Star. And it was just mind blowing, like how it was just
Mm.
like, yes, this is you, this is why you've been chosen, this is why you're here, this is the work you have to do. So I'm just now processing all of that. But the day I woke up to come home, I was staying on a beach and looked out and I could see all these vapor trails lifting from the sea. And it was so cold, the surface of the sea was freezing, and it was in the south, so it's wild to see that here. And I shot it over sunrise, and the sun just lifted and painted it all fire orange. It was
Mm.
the most ridiculous scene. And then the next day, I went out near a sunset here back at home, and we had really rare fog conditions where it was actually cascading like waterfalls off the cliffs, which I've never seen. And I put the drone up and realized there was a whole set of kind of, geographical, meteorological things happening as to why I was seeing that. And it was really rare, and I've not really seen anything online that looks like it. And then I knew it'd be cold the next day, so we got up for sunrise and went for a walk. And walking home, I suddenly realised I could see a fog bow, and they're really rare, just these white rainbows. So I put the drone up again, and then it created something called a Brocken spectre around it, which is this rainbow halo that the drone, literally just the drone in the sky creates because
Wow.
of the light passing around it, and then this white fog bow. And I was like, I can't actually keep up with all of this beauty that I'm witnessing after having had this spiritual awakening. But it was so vital in that journey of needing to get the dopamine moving again because of the lack of or the energy that the awakening had taken from me. that I needed that dopamine to start fueling me, and nature gave it to me in that way. And I was so open to source, and what source blessed me with over this weekend has been mind blowing. And it's brought me back into my body, back in from that kind of star space, back into, the kind of more um, earth-based body, but a real knowing now about this soul journey and why I'm here. And so it's really exciting to start to get to know that wisdom and then how that can support me on the journey. So yeah.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And you're always able to find the right words to describe your experiences. And you're such a beautiful example of really like going through your soul awakening and then responding to your soul pull, which is so nice. And this is what I try in my work to do for my clients as well, for them to allow themselves to really go where their soul is really calling them.
Mm,
Because by listening to you, or I'm sure the viewers and listeners, they'll agree, like you're tapped into so much joy and happiness. And I truly believe that we should feel those emotions along with feeling fulfilled, along with knowing that we are helping at a greater level. But
mm.
it's so beautiful to witness that. So for anyone who would like to work with you, anyone who would like to learn more about what you do, like where people can find you, and I'm going to add all of the links to the social media, but
Oh,
if you can talk about where, in general, where can people find you, how they can work with you, and perhaps there are any exciting projects or ideas on the horizon that you would like to share with the viewers and listeners
sure.
with.
Thank you, love. Yeah, so my website is my main sort of conduit of everything, which is rebeccadouglas.co.uk. And that just outlines the different modalities that I have to share these visual stories. And so primarily I'm a photographer, but I blend video as well. And then that kind of takes me up into the sky with the drone or underwater. And more, I'm speaking on stages and around campfires, and hosting events, and then writing as well. So I've written some editorial for magazines, reflecting on a lot of this nature-based connection, which is amazing to be able to share that. So I'm open to a broad range of ways that we can connect. And for me, then the next stage in that journey is reaching out to share more information, to jump on a call and check that we're aligned together, and start to envision what the journey gets to look like. So that's how people can find me and connect with me. And yeah, there's some interesting things happening that will be kind of coming online in the next quarter, which I can't wait to share more about. I have to be vague right now, but if
Mm-hmm.
people want to kind of connect with me on Insta, or join my newsletter, then a lot of that will be shared as and when it's ready to kind of unfurl into the visible space. So
Mm-hmm. Thank you for keeping it magical and enigmatic. I love it. One last question for those listening or viewing this podcast. For people who really want to reconnect with nature, creativity, or intuition, what advice would you give them to start their journey? So I'm really asking you about anything that you would like to leave the viewers and listeners with as a final message.
yeah, sure. I think it's starting to connect with the world around you and seek out nature in the space you're in, because even in urban spaces, there will be things that you can find that will help you start to anchor into this cyclical flow that we've talked about today. I think a lovely thing to do is maybe pick a tree, one that has a cycle, and really start to just get to know that tree and watch it, and maybe take a photo of it every day or every time you pass it, and build that up over the year and just start to really see its journey and think about what that can mean for your own journey and that seasonality within ourselves. And I just think there can be so many reflections and lessons on something as simple as that connection with a tree. And so I always think that's a really lovely way just to tap into this sort of way of being and way of living if it's something that's really new and can really sort of spark that journey. So I think that would be my thing to suggest really.
Thank you. Well, Rebecca, this has been such a magical conversation. I want to thank you so much for sharing your journey, your connection to nature, and the transformative power of your work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my love. It's been a joy.
And I want to say thank you to all of the viewers and listeners. Thank you, and goodbye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.